Here's my take. The debate about the military effectiveness of America's airstrikes against Iran misses a more profound point. Brilliant battlefield success by itself will not ensure a nuclear-free Iran. The U.S. attacks capped a year-plus-long Israeli campaign that utterly exposed that Iran's axis of resistance was a paper tiger. My own guess is that the American strikes were highly effective. Uranium enrichment facilities rely on elaborate machinery, steady power supply, and structurally sturdy environments. All that is likely to have been compromised by the 14 bunker buster bombs that landed at precise targets. But even assuming the damage was severe, most experts I've spoken to estimate that the strikes would have set back Iran's nuclear program by 1 to 2 years. By contrast, the Iran nuclear deal, finalized in 2015, placed Iran's nuclear program in check for 10 to 15 years. The Israeli attacks might actually have done more to delay Iran's nuclear program than the bunker buster bombs. In less than 2 weeks, Israel killed at least 14 of Iran's top nuclear scientists, even more high-ranking military officials, and destroyed around half of all its missile launchers, according to Benjamin Netanyahu. Iran's air defenses are close to neutralized, which means it is now vulnerable to an Israeli or American strike at any time. But, as the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Mariano Grossi, pointed out, Iran has the know-how to rebuild. It appears to have moved large quantities of enriched uranium that, if intact, could easily be weaponized. That uranium cannot be bombed without potentially causing massive casualties, which means that the only way to ensure that Iran will not be a nuclear weapon state would be through negotiations and inspections, in other words, by signing another Iran nuclear deal. Sometimes the pen really is mightier than the sword. For all his bluster about the American strikes, Donald Trump seems to understand this, and he is now calling for diplomacy. He's in a pivotal position. He has the political capital in America and Israel to make a deal. Iran can and should be asked to do more than was asked by the Obama administration in 2015. The Islamic Republic is in a much weaker position than it was then. In fact, than it's been in decades. The demands should include real curbs on a nuclear program that currently provides only about 2% of Iran's electricity, but also curbs on supporting militias in the Middle East that promote violence and instability. Iranians would benefit greatly if their government had to focus on bolstering its own people rather than its revolutionary credentials. The crucial issue will be uranium enrichment. Iran, based on the Non-Proliferation Treaty, says it has a right to enrichment for peaceful purposes. Israel wants them to have no enrichment whatsoever. The Trump administration had initially proposed a regional consortium that could enrich uranium while being monitored and provide Iranians with the uranium that is too low grade to be used for weapons. But once Trump saw the success of Israel's attacks on Iran, he decided to harden his position. He should consider going back to his previous stand. Most experts I've consulted say that the regional consortium would be workable and safe. Diplomacy that ended with a deal would have another major advantage. Whatever one speculates about Iran's future intentions, it did not have a weaponized nuclear program. U.S. intelligence has been clear on this time and again, and I've seen no contrary evidence. So the U.S. launched an unprovoked attack against a sovereign state without UN or even congressional sanction. That kind of unilateral military action should not be undertaken lightly. It's easy to cheer when Washington does it, but how will we feel when China does it? How do we feel about Russia doing just that in Ukraine? The rules-based international order is a mouthful, a strange abstraction that most people never think about. But we are living through the longest period of peace and stability in modern history among the world's major countries. That peace is what has allowed for the building of a global economy, of trade and travel, and a world in which nationalistic rivalries do not end up in a nuclear war. military action against Iran, even though it was unprovoked and unilateral, could be justified if it leads to a strengthening of nuclear nonproliferation, a warning to those who might cross the line. But that requires a political settlement of the issue in a way that is stable and acceptable to both sides, or else we merely have a ceasefire. And America's unilateral military attacks could push further the emerging chaos of international life, in which other powerful states also decide to break the rules, always for what they believe are good and urgent reasons. They will all justify their actions by saying what the soldier in Vietnam said, standing amidst smoldering ruins, that in order to save the village, he had to destroy it. Here at the Aspen Ideas Festival, I sat down with a man who managed these problems for the last administration, Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor under President Biden.
Jake Sullivan, pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
What was your reaction to Donald Trump deciding to use American military power in the way he did over the last few days?
My main reaction coming out of these strikes is the question that gets asked so often in foreign policy. Okay, then what? And the then what for me is that sitting here today, after American military pilots conducted an operation with skill and effectiveness, we still need a deal. Because Iran still has, it appears, stockpiles of enriched uranium, still has centrifuge capacity, even if the installed centrifuge capacity has been destroyed or damaged or who knows what, and still has know-how, and therefore still has the possibility of reconstituting its program. And let me add also, Iran right now is not allowing the International Atomic Energy Agency to go to any of these sites. So the verification we had before, or we'd have under a deal, we don't currently have.
Wouldn't it be fair to say that we were all surprised by how weak Iran and its proxies were?
You know, one thing that I've reflected on over the course of my 4 years as National Security Advisor is there's been more than one instance where I think we've overestimated the military capacity of our adversaries.
Soviet Union, Saddam Hussein.
Russia,
Right.
just before Ukraine. Right? We thought Kyiv had fallen a week because of the Russian military juggernaut, and Russia was exposed as having basically a corrupt and ineffectual army. And yes, I think the view from across the professional class of national security decision makers, including intelligence and uniformed military professionals, was that Iran and its proxies had more juice than it turns out that they had.
So let me ask you very simply, on the basis of having looked at this intelligence very carefully over the last 4 years, could Iran build nuclear weapons on a relatively fast timeline underground over the next year?
So I'm going to start with the caveat, because any good intelligence person will always start with the caveat. And my caveat is that we still need to get the full battle damage assessment of what happened. And we need it to be unfiltered from political interference. We just need the straight dope from the American intelligence community and, frankly, from the Israeli intelligence community. But based on what I've seen so far, it is probable that Iran still retains on its territory some stockpiles of enriched uranium, still retains centrifuges and the capacity to build more of them. Much of that was destroyed, but probably not all of it, and still retains the know-how. So if they woke up tomorrow and said, we are going for it, it's not implausible to me that a crash military program could be conducted in as little as a year. I've heard from some Israelis who say 2 or 3 years. You saw this one DAA report that said as short as 6 months. But it's going to be in that zone if they went for it.